We're streaming live on YouTube now as well. And as you're entering the room, if you would, or virtually, if you would open the chat and go to the drop-down menu at the bottom, click the second one, panelists and attendees, and just say hi and tell us who you are and where you're joining from. Like I did. I said Kathy from Wadsworth, Illinois. Who else is here with us today? Andrew from Minnesota. Hi, Lawan from DC. Lawan's a regular. Love to see. Who else is here? Dee from DC. Dana, welcome. Dana, Alaska. Oh, originally from Alaska, but you're in Chicagoland. Yes, because we're going to get together. Hi, April from Illinois and Autumn from Flint. Tanya from Geneva, New York. Christina from Michigan and Denise from Maryland. Recognize names. Hi, Sylvia from Illinois. Great to see old names I recognize and names I don't recognize. We're going to get started in about 30 seconds. Who else is here? Awesome, it's noon, so we're getting started. I want to welcome you all to I think the fourth episode or the fourth installment of Holistic Protection, Race and Cultural Insecurity in Modern Times. And I'm here with our presenter, Ruben Mahboobi. Welcome, Ruby. Thank you for being here. Thank you for gracing us with your wisdom on this day. My birthday. Everyone.
Oh, right. Oh, it is your birthday. So happy birthday, Kathy. And this is what it's all about. You know, it's like you had a choice, you know, and you are here doing the work, even on this day that you could be, you know, had the responsibility and a right to take off. So thank you for being here.
I'm delighted. I wouldn't be anywhere else. Hi, Tammy. Hi, Jennifer. Nice to see you. Thank you for all the birthday wishes. And let's move to the next slide and get the housekeeping out of the way. So the ways to engage, we use the chat a lot, and your primary go-to is the chat. You're welcome to put anything in the, well, after you see the agreements, talk to each other. You can say hi. You can also ask questions, make comments. The chat is yours. And then the other way is if you have a question or you want to say something that doesn't fit in the chat, or you'd rather just speak it, then you can raise your hand. Andrew, who's here supporting us in the background, will unmute you. You'll need to unmute yourself and then you can speak. And you might wonder, what is Anna agreeing to? What is Elizabeth agreeing to? Be Strong Families, in recognition that we co-create this safe space together, have agreements for everything that we do. So these are our agreements, and we ask that if you agree to these agreements, you put that in the chat and just say, I agree, which is to speak from your own experience using I statements, treat others the way you want to be treated. So respect, full presence, be here now with us. And if you need a minute, take a minute, because race and cultural insecurity is a hot topic today and a lot of days, and it's triggering for people sometimes. So if you need a minute for any reason, just take a minute, and come back when you're ready. So if you agree to these agreements, thank you. We have a lot of agreement, so I'm going to move on. So 11:02, turn it over to Ruben. And I'm going to do a little introduction of Ruben, which is Ruby has been a spiritual advisor, yoga teacher, and trainer for more than 30 years. These are some of his bona fides, his credentials. And he's also a dignitary and executive protection specialist. So this is a really unique skill set, I would say. And most people think of those two things, dignitary and executive protection and spiritual advising, yoga teaching, training, as being like two different worlds. But Ruby has actually put them together and pioneered a whole field of holistic protection. And it's a beautiful thing to learn about and to witness and to interact with. And I feel that in this webinar, you're also going to get a lot of the uniqueness of how he toggles on the issues in ways that other people don't. So I'm very excited for this webinar, and looking forward to learning with you from Ruben.
Thank you. We're all learning together, right? This is, one of the things is that as a mystic, and that's basically my spirit practice slash religion, if you would, is one of mysticism, and the idea that everything begins and ends with oneness, and oneness is for me the goal of this life, and that's also to basically come into consciousness and awareness of the self, which is then self-realization. And so these skills that I train and teach people with are not new by any stretch of the imagination. The way in which I do synthesize these teachings to a modern kind of approach is definitely, thank you again for recognizing, is the unique part. But the teachings themselves, as we'll get into, they're not new. It's just how they're applied, like any type of education or learning. It's how you apply that knowledge. The idea of maturation, reason why I'm talking about this kind of in the beginning part, is because this is what we're looking at right now in society, is a time of maturation, a time for when people themselves become, how do we say, not just grown up, but to begin to leave our primitive and childlike mindsets behind, in the forms of how we approach these very serious topics. And I want to thank Be Strong Families and again yourself for hosting these things, these wonderful webinars, because again, and then thank you guys, everyone that's listening right now, because that is what it's about. It's really about tuning in. And I used to like that. The 60s, they would say that. Let's tune in, man. Well, let's tune in to a frequency and a practice that will heal and elevate our consciousness to states of peace, because this is what we are looking for as individuals. I can probably assume that that's making these assumptions, that that's what everyone would like to have, is peace, and coming to peace of mind, body, and spirit. And when we unify, that makes it a holistic practice, is when we began to start looking at things from a total type of person, instead of separating ourselves into these so-called categories, but to try to really bring them all into oneness, harmony, peace, justice. And so as we begin our journey, that's why we have this slide, basically the art is this spirit tracking. This spirit tracking is basically, again, now in law enforcement, a lot of people would say profiling, these kind of ideas. But the idea is really just paying attention, because again, when we talked before, awareness is really about just being mindful, just being aware, and then realizing that there's not many accidents in the world. They're mostly just negligence based on humans not being or not paying attention. And so the energetic parts of it is now we start getting to a deeper part of the practice where we start learning about energy and how important that is. Vitality, which is something else you guys at Be Strong Family are big on, is vital. How vital this issue is that we're talking about today when it comes to race, when it comes to culture, in dealing in these times. Right now, everything that's going on in the world, you're starting to see things happening, different cultures, clashes all over, right? And plus with the pandemic and all these things, I could see that people who are not aware are going to be the ones that are going to see this as a very difficult and challenging time. And one thing for sure is that, and let me repeat that because again, I don't want people not to get that, but the idea is that the ones that are going to be who are shaken by what is going on, I think there's a wonderful bumper sticker, and I think we've said this in past seminars before, webinars before, that if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. It's kind of one of those things. And of course, we now need to understand as a mystic and a holistic practitioner towards peace that for me, and this is for me, and I pray that you all go into your work and maybe we'll all come to this realization at one point that the only thing that can sustain or heal any type of a problem in the world, being with ourselves, our families, etc., and I don't take this word lightly, is love. And we're going to see why that is important as we continue to go forward with our talk today. So, as we were talking before, we talked about how mindfulness and awareness, right? Okay, paying attention. Okay, that was covered, and we can kind of understand what that's about. We don't need to get too deep into that understanding, but we do have to begin to start understanding how has it become a point where it talks about each other. One of my favorite things I hear often, and I always smile when people say this, is I don't see color. I always laugh at that one. Or, their first thing is they want to defend, or I am not a racist, or any of these things. They start with a defense. And that always finds it interesting from someone who's a spirit tracker, because the idea again is then truth. Now, this is going to be heavy, so work with me here. Does not and will not need defending. Okay? Truth does not need defending from us, just as the sun doesn't need us to burn. Okay? It just is. The sun is in the sky. It does what it does. Guess what, friends? Truth, from a holistic point of view, does the same thing. Almost like a Star Wars kind of thing, where the light, which is we'll say is truth in this regard, will kind of overcome those obstacles. And this is very important because if we all need the sun, we all need it. It burns everybody as well as it comforts and brings joy to many. So is this issue. And if we continue to focus on who gets the amount of sun, oh, this group gets more sun and this one doesn't get as many as much. Well, that's just based on geography at that point in time. But the sun and time stays consistent as far as I know, since I've been around and probably way after. So we need to take the focus. Let's move forward on the next slide because we're going to get into this. And I'm not trying and I'm making sure when we talk about this issue, I'm going to make sure that you don't get the idea that I am not taking it in a very serious manner, because people's lives are in danger with this issue, and it's true. But I do want you to realize, though, these teachings, although seem very, very, they'll resonate with your spirit. And that feels like a duh, like we should just be doing these things. But the reality of the situation is that you can really start to begin to tell how people are living by how they're living, okay? How they're being, how they're moving in the world. And so when we began to start looking at that, and I used to listen to this one, someone say, one of my dear teachers, Joy DeGruy Leary, would talk about education. And when I first heard about education, I used to think, wow, PhDs and all these things and learned education. And that's not what we're talking about from a holistic point of view. We're talking about a holistic and spiritual education. Understanding that if we were to just educate, she would say, a drug dealer, okay, and we gave the drug dealer more education, then what we'd basically be doing would just be making a smarter drug dealer. He'd be going from selling dime bags to kilos, and he just becomes a better drug dealer. So an education has to become a spiritual education where at one point where man becomes understanding that what they're doing and how it affects each other. How does it affect my brothers and sisters in my neighborhood and in my communities and who are around me? So the education has to be one of a spirit nature, that when a person becomes mature, which is a definition of arising to what one knows. Oof. Maturity is arising to what one knows. So then, and then acting on it, because it just doesn't matter that you know a thing. It's then, well, we used to talk about philosophy in that way, that there's a difference between a philosopher and a divine or holistic philosopher. A philosopher just goes around I can never say that word on the go, but just begins to philosophize, or keeps talking about it. Yes, pontificating all over the world. Yes, the divine philosopher lives by his philosophy. Okay, this is a very important distinction, because this is what exactly we are asking and looking for each other. Because a lot of people know a lot of things, right? Kids know a lot of things, but then they're not really mature enough to actually go out on their own and apply those teachings in the world. So this is a very important of why I speak about education, that it's not like an education that we think of in the Western world, which is one where it's just books and regurgitation of knowledge and information. It is one where it resonates with the spirit and the soul of the mind, body, and spirit. Then a person can then go out into the world and use that education in their daily practice.
So I have a question or a comment. Is that okay?
Oh, of course, please.
Okay.
This
So,
is Be Strong Families here we're talking about.
so when you
Yes.
study history,
Mhm.
I like the juxtaposition in this what you must study, the sacred text, but also can you speak to like when you study history and you may be getting angry and you may be getting upset about the patterns of injustice that are when it comes to race and culture over time, but then you have these motivational tools to keep in a positive place. So can you talk about
Well, yeah, and I'm going to start with when you have a conflict, okay, and both parties are arguing, who's at fault? Okay? The spiritualist and the holistic practitioner says they're both at fault. Okay? And we don't even like to look at fault. We actually look at for solution based. Okay? And so the idea is that history, okay, now stay with me, friends. Okay, we're about to take a dip here. Here we go. Now this isn't mine. This is someone else's. I can't really recall at the moment, but they would say the past is history. The future is a mystery. This moment is a gift. That's why it is called the present. So that is Kathy's gift for today. It's her present because it's her birthday. So the idea is that if you stress only exists from the past, the past happens. The future is another type of stress we call anxiety of things unknown. So those two are the areas of where stress lives, in the past and in the future. Stress can't live in the moment. It's called adrenaline. That's a very good positive thing. So it's only when we're in the moment, being in the moment, can we truly be at peace. Peace exists and lives in the moment, from one moment to the next. And you're trying to stay in that place. So I too would be upset if I clung to the past, seeking for truth from the past. The past is the past. Not saying it wasn't relevant, or if it's not, and it's not important to take a look at, to observe, not to participate, but to observe it. Yes, that's a positive. But if I try to hold on to the past narratives, the past historic, accounts, so much has been misleading. There's been so many things that are, that people are questioning now more than ever. Oh my God, it's amazing. Thank God for our education and science, because my goodness, there's so many people. Can you imagine the Black man that's been in jail for 30 years or something crazy like this and gets exonerated after DNA test science? Whew, that's amazing to me. That blows my mind. I would call that, in the holistic realm, a miracle. You see? Okay, a miracle. And that's in the form of science. So if you find yourself discouraged, okay, I would encourage you to look at the world as a mirror. And in that mirror, that the things that you are discouraged about are usually the things that you're discouraged. Well, you're not discouraged about yourself yet because you didn't even know it yet, but the idea that it's in you. Okay. So we have to begin to start looking at it from that point of view. So for me, I find it, like, again, as we'll get to it in a little bit more, that what's new isn't true and what's true isn't new, is that this has been something as children that we have been dealing with since the beginning of time. We as humans, not just children, saying that we are childlike in our behaviors of not really being accountable. And like a child, we believe everything that we read. We believe everything that we're told. Okay. And we haven't yet reached maturation to be able to question. But they do question. Kids question the hell out of things. Why? Shut up. No, I'm just kidding. But this is why thing. But they don't know why they're asking why. They're just curious. They're curious. And that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful childlike curiosity. And that's what we also have to go back to in our practice, is a childlike innocence in our curiosity to begin to start to understand each other's culture, narratives, and story, just as a child. Once we do that, we will then be more kind with each other, seeing that we could understand that we're childlike in our nature to trying to understand. Not everyone is out to harm us. There's not always injustice, which gives me to another point. There's a difference between racism and prejudice. Okay. Those are very two different things, and I think most of the people have experienced prejudice in their lives, racism, by the popular, powerful group that then can physically oppress or repress you, is indeed racism. But prejudice is definitely what is going on. And let me tell you, friends, as a martial artist and as a protective specialist, it is the more they hate, the easier they are going to come to love. I have seen that in every case, in many cases I have worked. So the ones that are actually pushing, and really aggressively attacking, so-calledly, are your truest friends and allies once you turn them. Trust me on that one. Whew, there's a lot in that. But that's, I don't know if I really answered your question as a mystic. As you can see, it's very challenging to stay on task with these things.
Accountability and obedience.
Oh, yes.
Obedience is kind of a
touchy one. Yeah, it's tough. Obedience is a tough one for humans. Okay. Now, no one wants to be told because the first thing you think about obedience, you think about your parents telling you what to do or how to be or how to live, and these types of things. So you begin to start rebelling. You start challenging everything that your parents are trying to tell you in order for you to succeed in life or whatever it may be. And so, and it's funny that we're focusing on obedience first, because I think that's because most people shrug with that. Okay, let's take the word that's the so-called the opposite of that. It would be authority. Okay, and so if we look at that, the authority, if we break that word down, it's the author. I love that, by the way. Okay. It is the person who is telling the story. Okay. And right now, and we as humans, we like to buck the end results. We may not like the story, okay, of where people's stories are coming from. So if you are a mature reader, and that's why I love college and I love different places of higher learning, because you are asked to then critically challenge the narrative. You're asked to critically think about different things. And we have a society where people really aren't doing that anymore. They're just challenging the authority, which is different. See, you can challenge. See, this is very heavy. Stay with me. And I kind of keep saying that. It's kind of my catch thing. Stay with me, because it's a difference between challenging my narrative versus challenging me, the person. This is where it gets a problem. Okay. This is where we begin as a society to start going to a danger zone. Okay. Yes, I am the author, but you can attack my perspective. I don't mind that. But then when we begin to start attacking the character, the author's character of his presentation or his ideology. So it just find that's where it gets very interesting to me. And this is why we have a problem in our society with obedience, because at this point, we start looking at it. If you see underneath, we start talking a little bit about my metaphysics, and we began to start understanding accountability. Let's go with that really quickly. And what does accountability really talk about? It means to basically just to be accountable, right? So that means things have to measure up or not even equal out. See, this is what I'm talking about. People are using these words, and they're very lofty spiritual words. Peace is one of them. Equality is another one. There is no such thing as equality. Let's get real, friends. Okay, that is not a real construct. Equality is a construct, and therefore a measurement system that you or I, scientifically and probably mathematically, would probably never be able to come to understanding how we're going to equal out a system that, or a past narrative or of a story or of an author's construct or idea that has been created. How would we come to understanding an equality at that point if the author themselves aren't even alive to defend their so-called narrative? Okay, so accountability just means showing up. For me, it means to basically see the other person. Okay, and that's what we're looking for and what people are looking for. So this idea about race itself, I don't subscribe to race in the forms of what you or not you, but the world sees race as, because it's a construct. Okay, and if it's a construct and it was learned, then we can unlearn it. And it obviously means that it's not metaphysically positive because it has a beginning and an end. Okay. And that's some of the higher learning, higher stuff in the metaphysical categories. But the accountability is that when we talk about laws, rules, and regulations, they're for our safety and for our peace of mind. Okay. And most people will find those negative and right off, oh, laws. Ooh. So I put in suspect category anyone who bucks the laws. Now, at one time, there was a law that it was okay to actually lynch or kill people, right? Okay, that's a heavy one, right? So then we have to, at that point, through, and this is just, again, holistically, this is, they say, I can't remember the Bible term, so forgive me this one, but basically, God created the fool as well. And the fool was just as important as the king, for instance, because the fool is also has a great power to change the narrative. So not everyone everyone has to know their role and their lane and their place in this so-called educational place or being in our so-called narrative of race and culture. We have a lot of people who get defended, like I said earlier, right? As soon as you begin, you feel guilty. Where does guilt come from? That's not a race problem. That's a you problem. You got to work on that. You get what I'm saying? Or maybe there is something inside of you that is very much feeling a certain way with other races, and you treat people differently at that point. At that point, I did when I was learning. I had to come up because that's really what I had to experience. Most people don't even understand. See, when I talk about the accountability, I also talk about the science of it. Most people don't even know. Here's a good one I always ask. Most people don't even know the percentage of white people in America. They don't even know. So I asked them, I say, what's the percentage of white people in America? A lot of people have no idea. From the last numbers that I've checked, it was around maybe 70%. Okay, we'll just give that. All right. And then that's a lot. Okay. That is a lot of white people. So
In California, there was a big news that about, I think it was even 10 years ago, whites became not the majority. So, and
okay.
as California goes, so do the rest of the nation. So now
Yeah.
in California, white people are like 45%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very well. So it's
So,
shifting. Yeah, sure. It's shifting. But the idea is the same. It's a lot of white people.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the point is that 13% black, 13% I think Latino, 5% Asian or something of that nature. And so when you began to start to realize that, you start kind of going, no wonder why I grew up watching the Brady Bunch, and why all of a sudden I picked the girl with the blonde hair or the blue eyes over the dark skin or this, that, and the other, because it's a conditioning in our society based on the numbers, friends. Come on, science. Even racism itself was economic based. It wasn't just this idea of I hate you and this, that, and the other. Actually, there was quite a bit of empathy and a lot. I mean, see, again, all these things are very good, are controversial to a lot of people because the people are emotional and they have an emotional charge, and will then react to injustices and race things that would go. But if you really begin to start breaking down, as Dr. Joy DeGruy Leary has, and there's so many people, Wise, I mean, there's so many names I can give you. We'll have to come up with that later. But there's so many people who understand actually in the psychology of the thing. So once you understand the thing, it's very difficult at that point to be angry at the thing. And so, and then seeing for what it is at that point in time, that it is a thing. So laws, rules, regulation, and safety are important because the universe follows a law. Everything follows a law. Nature itself follows laws. So as humans, so shall we. And to think that we're going to, as we've been trying, now humans are fascinating. We've also manipulated nature. I mean, we're able to do that. That's fascinating. We're starting to use solar panel, all kinds of things. It's just great. So, but the idea is that we do have to follow these kind of laws, because if we don't, we can injure ourselves, hurt ourselves, and it create a safety problem, obviously, for your family and for the world. But to be accountable just means to show up. Now, we broke down that accountability into individuality, okay, which is very interesting. For instance, I'm using this example. I feel sorry for many teachers out there in the world. I really do. I think it's a big injustice, a big problem that we don't pay our teachers enough money, just like we don't pay law enforcement enough money. So it's like, so economics obviously plays inside of the understanding that you kind of, I hate this, I really dislike this statement. You kind of pay for what you get. Well, you kind of pay for what you get, and that's what we got, is a bunch of people who are not educated and who are getting paid poorly, and basically are acting on their primitive and basically lowest natures. So at this point, individual accountability, when we began to start looking at it, is, I'll give you this one here. I have parents in there and the teachers. Why did I bring those up? Because that's kind of a baseline that I'd like to start at. Teachers are not there to discipline your children. They're not there to discipline them. They're not there to teach them how to behave. That is the job of the parents in the household, and that their kids go to school with proper discipline to respect the teachers and to get the education. You'll hear many teachers talk about they spend way too much time disciplining children. Then they get distracted. And can you imagine all the other kids that get distracted? Oh, it's just a terrible cycle at that point. But that kind of idea where parents have given up their kind of ability to educate and discipline their children at home. That's the first place where they get their education from. So we're starting to see that old adage of just poor home training. You know what I'm saying? So there's just a lot of that going on in the world, just a lot of poor home training. And that begins with us as parents and people, the individual, that we're teaching our children to not respect us, the parents, and each other. Then obviously they're not going to respect teachers, and then they are not going to respect, obviously, law enforcement at this point, or people who are there to police and do their job. Okay, now, yes, are there people who aren't well, who are also cops? Yes, indeed. They're not well. And so there's this thing. That's why there's accountability. It has to come from the police, has to come from the teachers, has to come from parents, has to come from everyone that's involved, that they learn to become accountable of themselves and their behaviors. Okay. We did talk about collective accountability at that point, because then at that point, how do we become as a group to become responsible for each other? Meaning, am I my brother's keeper? You know, do we start looking out for each other? We're really not doing that too much anymore, because it's just not in fashion to look out for each other as much as it is to look out for my selfie and my individualistic type of, mind state. So we're seeing that this is a problem. And in this area of holistic work that we do for protection, is that the more self-absorbed people become, obviously the more mental illnesses follow. You guys obviously know that, right? Okay, so narcissism, we're starting to see that now. Obviously, I'm not going to go into politics and naming names, but we can see that. How did that become so popular? You get what I'm saying? Where a person's personality is then leading the world instead of their education and their truth for humanity and their quest for humanity. Yeah.
That's a really deep, understanding that the more individualistic the society, the more self-absorbed people are, the more mental illness, because I feel like it's probably not only narcissism, it's probably also depression, anxiety. Like the more connected you are to others, the stronger.
That's right. You're displaced. It's displacement of energy. You get what I'm saying? It's like if you have one nail, okay, if you ever see those, I like to go, when I go to India and I watch the guys do the coffin of nails or the bed of nails. So the science is, if it's one nail, he's going to get punctured, he's going to die. But the more nails supports the distribution of its body weight, and therefore there would be balance. They will be able to handle it. So this idea of individuality in the society then says that I'm going to take it on. Whoa, I'm sorry. I don't want to take anything on by myself. I'm a big consultant person. I love consulting with a bunch of people. I don't want anything on my own. You understand? I'm consulting about if I'm going to go to the bathroom. Is it okay? No, just kidding. But I'm serious though. On the real, that yes, there has to be this level of community and collective reasoning. We can't do anything. No man is an island. I mean, these are all old teachings, right? But we have to begin to see that we have become a society that's been so I, instead of we, that that's again, those basic teachings that we don't need to spend much time on, but we can understand that. Yeah. And hierarchy, power, control. Again, once you're in that role of accountability and collective consciousness, there's no need for power and control. You'll soon see that that's not a thing. But so be very careful of people who are looking for that power and control. If you notice, it's policemen, right? The authority, okay? The law enforcement, they want to have the power and the control, and they want to dominate, right? Okay. And so that's because of a lack of that collective. You get what I'm saying? That's the individual at that point who wants to then be godlike and make decisions for other peoples and their beings and their bodies. That's fascinating to me.
Dana has a lot of good stuff in the chat. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I can't even see. Yeah.
Dana says, showing up, that reminds me of the statement that comes back in a marriage is 50-50 when the reality is a marriage is 100-100. To be successful, I believe the same idea that we need to bring 100% of ourselves to all our relationships. And when we as parents have given up our responsibility to raise our children and then turn around and critique the teachers who failed to teach our children discipline, that is seriously screwed up. We
Mhm.
treat each other as partners, not antagonists.
That's right.
And Aisha says anxious people are thinking more of others, opposite of narcissists. Maybe the I focus in their case is focusing on what they can do for others. And I was thinking also, Aisha, that anxious people are thinking of themselves in relation to others as if they're separate from the others, that they're
Mhm.
not supported by and in a web of connection to the others. They look at the others as being potentially critical of them, potentially dangerous for them, potentially they're going to not do things right, they're going to lose pride, they're going to lose, I mean, that's anxiety, is the fear of others
Mm.
essentially, instead of the connected to others.
That's
Um,
right. And fear is the catalyst for most of this. You have to realize that fear is a lot of the problem. You know what
okay,
I mean?
so I'm just going to do a time thing, which is it's 12:38 and we're on
Oh
the
my gosh, how can we can't solve the world, we can't have world peace in an hour?
yeah.
Oh,
So respect and submission. Do you want
oh,
to get to the
yes.
love part?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey man. Yeah. Submission. All right, we know what respect is. Well, the respect is just let's go with respect real quick. Respect is intimacy. And I said this before, into me you see, allowing yourself to be seen. If you allow yourself to be seen, there comes a certain level of vulnerability and humility that comes with that. And so if you allow that to happen, you will then start to respect others people in that regard, because they're showing up. If they show up, which is what they're planning, there's going to be a vulnerability. And these are again, oh my God, I could do a whole, Kathy, we could do a whole workshop, a day, weekend, whole thing on just learning the signs of it. It's just like when I love training animals, because animals don't talk back too much, but the animals are great. And the idea is just that they have a wonderful way of submitting right away to the order of things. Why can't we? We need to learn to become like that, where we just learn and we go, oh, okay. That makes sense. And we usually do, as a general rule, which is why I am a big lover of society, because, most people are doing it. So don't think that we're not. It's positive. Submission. That's another one. It's in that, you see, it's on top of obedience, right? So it's just this whole idea that these are trigger words that most people have a very difficult time with, is to submit. Okay. And that means that, we have to, this is how I was taught. We have to sacrifice the important for the most important. So when you show up and you have something that's important, you know, she said my cat does it. Yeah, good luck on a cat. Yeah. But the idea is that when we don't submit and understand surrender, these are not negative words. These are very powerful words. In that word should also be retreat, because that's what a retreat is. A retreat is just not, it doesn't mean you gave up the war. The retreat means that you're taking time for peace, to go and reflect about the idea of showing up again to fight, because if you don't, you may not win that one. So a retreat is very positive. Yes.
I want to
You're gonna
talk
say,
about my cat for just 1 minute and then we can
oh,
go to
okay.
the next slide.
Oh yeah.
Because she said my cat does, and I had an experience with my cat yesterday. I don't know if anybody has ever had this before, but I needed to take her inside and she didn't want to go inside. She's an inside outside cat. And I picked her up and she scratched me and fought me and ultimately escaped. I let her go because she was hurting me. But I didn't stop. I went then after her again, like after she got out of my arms, I went and pursued her and called her, and she got quiet and she allowed me to pick her up and she allowed me to take her inside. And I feel like that was submission. That was her getting a hold of herself and saying, wait a second, what am I doing? My person, I just fought my person who feeds me and who, loves me. And she submitted. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like even animals, like my
Oh yeah.
cat didn't submit, but then my cat did submit, and it
Oh
was a choice,
yeah.
you
Oh
know.
yeah. And in mysticism, we say every breath teaches you death.
Mhm.
You see, so what that means is basically that everything that comes to you is a teacher
Mhm.
and a teaching. Every action, every step is a teacher in how to walk, how to stand, how to move, when to sit. So I mean, and we have to begin to start seeing that in literally every action. So that means when the policeman does come, he knows that in every action that he's doing, and in every action that you're doing as the person, is going to have a rippling effect on each other. So we must be gentle, kind, merciful, submission, so
Patient.
the patient. And those aren't weaknesses, those are
And,
strengths, you
and
see.
with my cat, it's also like being accountable to the outcome. Because the reason I was taking her inside was because they were spraying poison on the grass. She doesn't know that, she's a cat. But I know that my trying to get her inside isn't just about power over, like I'm the boss, like I want you here now. It's I'm being accountable to the best thing for the situation, which is her health and her safety, you know?
Yeah, and I would just also like to add to that, and that's a beautiful thing, because yes, your idea was, yes, you were coming with love, and you were coming with wanting to protect and do all those things, but guess what? What's new isn't true, and what's true isn't new. Cats have survived this environment for eons. Do not think for a second that a cat can't smell poison. Don't understand that they don't know how to survive in the world that they've come from, as we domesticated the cat, you see, to some degree. And so I just want to make sure that you understand that it wasn't just you, it was a relationship. You were partnering at that point. You got out of your way of aggression and was like trying to tell her to come back. She was allowing that energy. You get what I'm saying? It becomes a symbiotic relationship. And that's what needs to happen in our ways with each other, is to stop trying to push our agenda on our children. And we need to stop pushing each other. We need to stop thinking what my way is the best way for your safety and so-called security. I don't go with that. Even as a practitioner of this for over 30 years, I would never push my agenda on any of my clients unless the car was about to hit them. And at that point in time, I then physically interfere with their ways of being to maneuver them out of the way if they're not being mindful. But anything else of that, oh, no, 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 I'm going to allow you to fall. We'll take care of that, you know. But let's talk about this. I think the church has led us. Oh, the church.
The church has led us to the fairly negative connotation of submission. It doesn't mean I'm a doormat, but rather it means you're under God's purpose and plan for your
Woo! Preach. Who was that?
how to the greater good, because you realize it's the greater good.
Yeah, amen. Yeah. I love those chats. That was a good one. But yeah, so let's talk about some solutions, and I like that. You might hear this word self-care, right? Oh, and this is great. I like when you put it isn't selfish. Self-care isn't selfish. I always say in my teachings, it's not about selfish, it's self first. Okay, self first needs to come into play. All right, then you can take care of someone else. But if you can't take care of yourself, please stay over there, mind your own business, because you're not capable of taking care of somebody else, which is colonialism, by the way. So, because we're going to stick back to our topic here, you hear what I'm saying? Is that people think they can go to other people's territories, places, homes, and tell them how to live with their narrative. Ooh, ouch, ooh, because occupying someone's physical place relates to their mental place, which then is their mind and spirit place. And I would say to them, or whoever does that, watch your karma, because that will come back to you tenfold, you see. So we need to not occupy other people's lands, territories, etc. We need to learn to obviously coexist, because
in the US, we are totally occupying other people's territory. Only 200 years ago, this was not anybody's except for the Native Americans. So
okay. Yes, we don't want to get. I don't want to get too wrapped up. See, a lot of people like Kathy's one of those fire people. I'm just going to say yes, we could go into another hole, but we don't have a lot of time to go into.
I like the part where you're talking about how if you feel worthy of protection.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah.
That's for everything.
If you,
once
that's right.
Feel worthy of protection, you start extending that to other people. But if you don't have self-worth or self-love, then it's going to be much more difficult for you to respect and value and protect?
Oh yeah, easy. That's an easy thing, and that's the thing where it's obvious when you pay attention to people's lives. I could tell if someone loves themselves by how they're living. You get what I'm saying? I don't need to. You don't even need to tell me anything. You could look on your face. Are the lines on their face sorrowful? Are they, is there light energy, vitality that comes on? Do they have a zest for life? Do they love their neighbor? Do they want to give more than they want to receive? It's these obvious signs that, like, for me, are obvious for the people who I surround myself in the world, because I only surround myself with people who do those things. Why would I surround myself from people who don't? I don't understand why people choose to have those people around them, because it's going to just affect you, especially if you're not strong enough. Then you yourself are going to start feeling those negative effects from the people who are more strong in their wanting to destroy or bring you down. Missionaries are guilty of doing this. Yeah.
Well, going into places and indoctrinating communities with their beliefs and changing the structure of their society.
First of all, metaphysically, we have to understand the word belief is metaphysically negative spiritually. So if anyone brings to you the word believe, I would start already to put them in suspect category holistically and metaphysically, just as a thing. And we would say F the beliefs. Okay, activism versus, we're seeing a lot of that going on right now. I am not an activist. I'm sorry, but it's just, if you people out there who are listening to this, good for you. God made the fool. Okay. The fool is just as important. So yes, activism is important. So people out there who feel like they are going to be active, then guess what? Yes. And am I calling you a fool for it? Hey, if it quacks like a duck, and if it leads to violence and anger and these things, these are opposite of a holistic teaching. I'm sorry. But a demonstration, I'm with you. I got you. I'm all around on a demonstration. You get what I'm saying? A demonstration usually uplifts, a demonstration is spiritual in nature. The idea of activism, you have to be very careful. It's like electricity without a conduit. You know what I'm saying? It's a very dangerous thing, but important. Yeah. A demonstration is one who then is mature enough. Remember what I said, who arises to what one knows and then shows you how to be. Well, guess what? That's a demonstrator, isn't it? Isn't it? Yes, that's divine philosophy at that point. It's someone who's living the teachings, living the life. So at that point, I am trying to, me personally, walk this earth in a demonstration of how to be in the world. How to show other white people that big black men aren't frightening and scary. Well, I am. That's what I want to be, but deep down, everyone knows. And so, but the idea is just that you don't train. I train animals and I don't train them out of fear, because then they're just acting out of fear. And one day they'll turn on me. But if I train them out of love and demonstrate love to them, holy moly, my animals respond to that and they want to love you back. And so the absence of my love is more punishment than any gun, any violence, any activism you're ever going to give and do, is you missing the love that I have to give.
So it's not.
I had to give myself an on that one. Yes.
Okay. Anyway,
and lots of laughter. If you can't laugh, that's another. We forgot to put laughter on that.
So what I'm getting from this slide is also like to be attentive to the energy of the gathering, because if you have like 100 people, who are raising candles, and chanting together and praying or whatever, then that's one energy. And if you have 100 people who are like, whipping up anger and frustration and then that's a different energy. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Sure. I mean, that's a very simplified. Yeah. Yeah, the energy of a place. Don't go to Waffle House after midnight. I'm sorry. I just won't be going to Waffle House after midnight. It's just not going to happen for me. I'm using it as a joke, but it's very serious. It's that, parents used to tell me that. They used to say, oh, nothing good happens after midnight. Well, as a kid, you're like, hell yeah, we can have a good time. But anyway, you get my point. It's just that you also have to realize it's really about paying attention, right? And in that paying attention, for me, I have too much to do in the world, and so therefore I don't have a lot of time. So for me, I value my time as I value myself. And if I value myself, I value my life. And if I value my life, I'm going to protect myself. And that's what the self-care is all about. Okay. And is as soon as we begin to start self-caring about ourselves, then we can start loving everyone else and loving ourselves. And here is the cap. This is kind of the totality of all of my teaching, which is there is physical for every problem. I'm telling you, I don't know how to tell this any more clear. It has saved my life time and time again, that for every problem that I have ever had, there was a spiritual solution to that problem. And I had to go and seek and find how to come about getting those solutions. And trust me, this is the best part. I don't know what man thinks about themselves as being so unique and so special, and that they have to come up with all this uniqueness and ideas. And I did this and I did that. And even in my thing, I talk about my teachings. Again, these aren't my teachings. These are just teachings I'm just the interpreter, and I'm remixing, and all I'm doing is just throwing a different sauce on it. Other than that, these teachings have been here since way before I was even around. And if we go back to those teachings, trust me, and I'm not just talking biblical, please, friends, or, Quranic, or any of these religions, the things I'm talking about were before there was even religion, the construct of religion. And, again, people of power want to hold on to these things. That's why, they need a following. They want a flock. You get what I'm saying? They need all these things. I'm sorry. I don't need that to govern myself. I have the teachings to govern myself, and that I myself take my responsibility of that very important. And so, and I can submit and surrender to those who know more, especially those doctors who are working, who've got PhDs and all these types of things about science. That's where we're questioning that too now. Authority. Oh, we're questioning science. I failed science class, please. So don't try to tell me I'm going to start talking about all of a sudden now these scientists don't know. Okay. They know more than I do. And so I'm going to submit to their knowledge. You see? But yeah, our daily practice is to stay positive. These are some of the yoga teachings, that are on this list, because yoga, again, saves my life. For those who, are looking for a practice that doesn't have to do with just biblical constructs or Western kind of constructs, this Eastern practice of yoga is a very powerful one. It has a lot of information. My favorite part of this is watching your diet, because again, diet isn't about what's going in my mouth alone. It's what's going in my ears. It's what's going in what I'm watching, on TV. I used to watch, I tell you, I watched a lot of action, I stopped watching the action. I got into some drama. Oh my God, my heart starts opening up, all the love. But we have to start looking at these different types of way. Do I have a right view? When I talk about right with these things, we have to realize what's the opposite of wrong. Okay. When people would say right, right is wrong. And it's like, no, right. The opposite of right would be left. You see? So when we start talking about a right intention, this is not, I like the word, what's more correct. You get what I'm saying? Because again, these are just words, and words have power and meaning, but I think we get to a point where we're being too righteous. But the idea is just like, which is the highest vibration, which is the best frequency
Righteous.
to be on.
Righteous. The core of righteous is right, though.
Yeah, but again, I would be careful of that as well, because only who would go around talking about judging themselves that way, that they're righteous, about these things. So for me, I look at a thing just like this wheel. I don't go what's right. I go what's most correct, which is going to raise the highest level of positivity. So look at that, like with this wheel called right. It's like looking at what is my intention. Okay, that's so important, and we need to really address that. I don't know how much time we have, but I'll just go through this really quickly. The intention is important. Really quick, if we can go back one slide, please, because I can go through that really quick. But the intention, it's like a story if you look at it. What is my intention when I open my mouth? Once I open my mouth, am I going to live? Am I going to live my teachings of what I speak about? Does it affect my work and how my world is going to be, my worldview when I go to work? When I go to work, am I going to put the right effort in? Well, how do I put the right effort in? Well, I got to really be mindful. I got to start really thinking about what that means. And when I take that time, I'm going to reflect. take a moment to breathe and to be in that moment to breathe, you would realize that all these things that we're protesting, all these people's lives that have been lost, I guarantee it would not have happened. And I would put that on record that it would not happen if both parties took a breath. Okay? Both parties took a breath. All right? And the idea of right view, okay? Right view. All right? And that will come about when you have all of these things in order. That's why I gave you that wheel. You can just go around it in clockwork circle. That way you get to feel. That's what's from Buddhism. They spin it so that way you can just follow the clock of thinking before I make a movement, before I make an action. To get to the right view, I have to have a good intention. And if I have a good intention, I've got to speak my truths from a good place of intention. Then I can do the action. Yes, like this person here. This person had the right view, the right idea, the right, she was using those teachings and decided at that point to have an action. And that action was a protest, okay? And to demonstrate that she was not going to that. Some people would say activism. I don't think she was trying to be violent. Nope. That was not her intention. Her intention was not aggression. Her intention wasn't angry. Well, I bet you her intention was angry because she was tired of having to get up to move for someone else to sit, especially if she was an elder. Can you imagine that? You're sitting on a bus and then some young person telling you to get up and move. Oh, child. Anyway, just who raised you? Anyway, so you could see that this person, and I love her sentiment, which is, this is, again, how I live my life. And that is, that's why I said race is even a construct. And so to be human is more important. And at that point, that there's only one race, and that is the human race. That is the human part of our being that we need to get to, which is the soul and the spirit part. And if you find yourself being angry and defensive on all these things, you're going to start to see that there's something deeper inside of you that needs to be worked through, because it's very difficult when you shine light on someone who's been asleep, when a baby has been asleep for so long and then the light is shown on them. It's painful, to be awake, to come out of this world of sleep that's been asleep for so long. So be patient and kind and merciful when waking a sleeping baby.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Ruby. And we'll look forward to hosting you again on June 22nd. And we're very grateful for the time with you today. So, there was Andrew posted a magazine article about you that people could to look at.
Oh, is that who did that?
Andrew in the
Oh, Andrew, how did he got that? How did he get that one? Boy, you guys are like spies. Ooh, how did you get all that information?
So, okay. So next time, join us in Social Media Journey. Come on, Andrew, let's go. Tomorrow is Healthy Mind for the Long Haul. We're on our Mental Emotional Vitality Week. And tomorrow, Robin's here to talk about Healthy Mind for the Long Haul. And then Yoli will be back on Thursday. And I love the title of this one, Fluffing, Wiggling, and Raspberries, How Movement for Health Can Be Fun. And that's and then the cafe is on Friday. So we'll see you again. And appreciate your being here. Thank you very much.